Hi everyone, I'd like to take just a few minutes to walk you through part 2 of your diet project. Unlike part 1, I don't need any more charts or graphs. We already did that in the first part of your project. What I do need from now on is a narrative discussion of your results. I want you to talk about, discuss, write about coherently and substantively about your results. You should stick to the specific questions that are asked in each part of your diet project, the instructions for each part, and each question should be answered separately and clearly. So we know that you're answering one question versus another one. Don't combine them. Try to keep them in order so it makes it easier for us to find your relevant questions and grade them appropriately. And always refer to the specific grading criteria that I have provided you in the instructions. And lastly but not least, do try to stick to the maximum page limit. For this part of the project, it is 3 pages, double-spaced max. So, how do you approach part 2? Well, first you look at page 4 of part 1 of your report. And on page 4 of part 1, you will see your own MyPlate analysis. Here's an example of one that I've provided for you. You'll see on the left is the list of each food group, the goal for each food group for this particular student, their actual intake on the right, and the percentage of the actual intake that met their goal on the far right. So, in part 2, there's 2 overall questions. The first one is asking you to discuss the quantity of foods that you consumed and how that compares with the actual recommended intake from each food group. And in particular, I want you to compare your actual intake with what was recommended. How far away are you from the recommended level? Are you 1 serving away? Are you 2 servings away? Are you a couple servings over? Are you getting more from one group than another? Could you make adjustments to your diet? I would like you to discuss each of the food groups, your intake of each of the food groups separately. And in your discussion, I want you to talk about specific foods that you might actually be willing to add or incorporate into your diet or eliminate if necessary to adjust your intake accordingly to meet the recommended goal level. For example, if you're, let me go back 1 second. This person, they're getting plenty of fruits, but not enough vegetables. So they may want to substitute one of their fruit servings for an additional vegetable, maybe a handful of baby carrots. That might bring them up to, another half cup or a cup, depending on how big their hand is. And then maybe an extra salad with dinner. That would definitely bring them up. So the second part of the part 2, the question 2 really, talks about the quality of the diet. So in the first question, I want you to talk about or discuss the quantities, how it compares, specific recommendations that you would actually be willing to incorporate or make. The second part of part 2 looks at or asks you to discuss the quality of your choices here and how that compares to the specific recommendations for each of the 5 key components of a healthy eating pattern that is outlined in the most current version of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And here are those guidelines here. And you'll see that answering each of these questions is worth 8 points, so please make sure that you discuss each one of them separately. Are you getting a variety of vegetables from all of the subgroups? Meaning, are you getting any dark green, red, and orange vegetables or legumes, beans and peas from your protein group, for example? Are you getting that variety? And if not, what might you do or be willing to do to adjust your intake? For fruits, are you eating all 100% fruit juice and no actual whole fruits? You do want to focus on whole fruits, so how might you incorporate those? For grains, you want to make sure, you want to try to discuss how how much of the grain-based foods that you're consuming in your diet are actually in their whole form. Are they whole grain? And if not, what might you do to adjust that? And so forth. With regard to dairy, if you don't eat milk or dairy or yogurt that comes from cows, that's fine. But you should discuss your willingness to incorporate a dairy alternative like a soy milk or something like that, a food that will allow you to get some of the same nutrients that you would provide or that you would find in a dairy food. All right. And I know a lot of people are getting more protein than they need, especially from the animal-based sources, but if you are willing to make some substitutions, then talk about those. All right, so that's it for part 2. Good luck, everyone. As always, please be in touch with any questions.